Early morning at 5 a.m. in the Boston suburbs, with mist hanging in the air. The crisp air enveloped the quiet residential neighborhood. Having just finished a 12-hour night shift, I stood in front of the white two-story house, dragging my tired feet. Morning dew still lingered in the well-maintained garden. The maple leaves swayed in the gentle breeze. I unlock the front door and quietly enter the house. As usual, the empty house is completely silent. I take off my shoes and pull my cell phone from my uniform pocket. Still no messages from my son. I head to the living room and, with my usual deep sigh, turn on the coffee maker. The sound of grinding beans echoes through the quiet house. While waiting, my eyes naturally drift to the photographs on the wall. The last family photo we took 5 years ago, on Ethan's 15th birthday. The three of us smiling in front of a chocolate cake. Ethan with his shy smile, Richard with his proud expression, and me happily resting my hand on my son's shoulder. Back then, no one could have imagined things would turn out this way. I'm Sarah Mitchell, a nurse with 13 years of experience in the emergency room at Boston General Hospital. Well respected as a dedicated healthcare worker, I've struggled to balance night shifts with family life. Known for my gentle personality, I'm trusted by my colleagues. I made sure to spend every holiday with my son. We'd visit museums, play with science experiment kits, or sometimes simply watch TV while eating popcorn. That ordinary daily life crumbled away after that day. When Ethan disappeared, he was a 15-year-old freshman in high school. He excelled particularly in science and math, belonged to the science club, and dreamed of becoming a medical technologist. Perhaps influenced by my work, he had a strong interest in the medical field. My quiet, bookish son didn't have many close friends, but he had a few good friends in the science club. He often spent his afternoons in the lab, and even at home, he could frequently be found absorbed in science magazines. And then there was Richard Cooper in our family. He was a well-known real estate agent in the area. Financially stable with an outgoing personality, he had a good reputation among others. He was devoted to family and actively participated in local volunteer activities. On holidays, he could be seen taking Ethan to baseball games or playing catch in the yard. After my divorce 10 years ago, I spent 5 years as a single mother before meeting Richard at a hospital charity event. He was there as a donor, and we first spoke at the reception desk where I was working. After dating for a year, we married, and when Ethan was 10, we started our new life as a family. Though I had concerns at first, Richard was kind to Ethan. At least, that's how it appeared to me. The smell of coffee begins to fill the room. As I pour it into a mug, I remember the morning scenes from back then. We always spent breakfast time together, all three of us. Ethan would eagerly talk about science club activities, Richard would share stories of his work successes, and I would talk about happenings at the hospital. The aroma of toast would waft through the air, and orange juice glasses would sparkle in the morning sun. We valued family time on holidays. The neighbors thought we were a very close-knit family. Staring at the photo, I keep replaying the events just before his disappearance. Ethan seemed normal, his grades were stable. Family relationships appeared good. There were absolutely no signs of problems. Or perhaps that's just how it seemed to me. As a mother, were there signs I should have noticed? Sinking my tired body into the sofa, I take a sip of hot coffee. The sun is slowly rising, brightening the room. Bird songs can be heard in the distance, announcing the start of a new day. However, for the past 5 years, my mornings have always been the same. Finishing a 12-hour night shift, returning home, drinking coffee while staring at my son's photo. That had become my daily routine. Sometimes tears would come, but today my eyes were dry. In the photograph, Ethan wears a gentle smile. Images flash through my mind, him absorbed in reading science books, earnestly writing lab reports, smiling while helping prepare dinner. The day his eyes sparkled saying, "I want to work in medicine too," when he saw me in my white uniform. Such fragments of daily life surface and fade away. The clock was approaching 6 a.m. Soon, the sounds of neighbors leaving for work and school would begin. I stand up and climb the stairs. I stop in front of Ethan's room. My hand rests on the doorknob for a while. Today, like yesterday, silence fills the room. The bed is neatly made, textbooks are stacked on the desk. His experiment notebook is written halfway through the last page, with a fountain pen resting on top. The space seems frozen in time, as if Ethan could return at any moment. The morning sun streaming through the window bathes the room in a golden hue. A new day is about to begin. But in my heart, time has remained frozen since that day. Every day I clean the room the same way, change the sheets, open the windows to let in fresh air. I was afraid of losing my son's scent. On top of the dresser stand the trophies Ethan won at science fairs, gleaming gold without a speck of dust. Next to them lies a brochure for a medical technology school, left exactly as Ethan had placed it. His dream is still here. That day was an ordinary Monday morning. Through the morning mist, Ethan left the house at 7:15 a.m. as usual. I was on day shift, so I could have breakfast with my son. Toast and scrambled eggs, with Ethan's favorite blueberry jam. We shared casual conversation, never imagining it would be our last breakfast together. "Mom, I might be late today. We're starting a new experiment in science club." Ethan said this while adjusting his school uniform tie. Richard had left early that morning. He said he had final adjustments for a big real estate deal, unusually not joining us for breakfast. Work at the hospital was busy as usual. Patients kept arriving at the emergency room, barely leaving time for lunch. Around 3 p.m., I received a message from Ethan. "The experiment's looking good." I sent a quick reply, "Do your best. But don't stay too late." That would be my last exchange with my son. When 7 p.m. passed and Ethan hadn't returned, I initially thought the experiment was running long. But he usually would have contacted me, and now his cell phone was turned off. Growing worried, I called his science club advisor, who told me Ethan hadn't attended club activities after finishing afternoon classes. Panic hit me. I frantically contacted all his friends. No one had seen my son. His social media accounts showed no posts since morning. When Richard came home, he urged me to contact the police immediately. The police acted quickly. Checking security camera footage, the last image of Ethan was on the platform at the station nearest his school. He was in his uniform, wearing his usual backpack, holding his cell phone. His trail completely disappeared after that. He had only taken about $30 with him. Checking his wallet, we found his ATM card left behind. Police considered the possibility of kidnapping, but there were no threatening messages. It was as if my son had vanished into thin air. From that day, my life changed completely. The emotional shock forced me to take leave from the hospital. I went to the police station every day. I put up posters around town and showed my son's photo to passers-by. Unable to sleep at night, I spent more and more time in Ethan's room. Richard moved in a different direction. He hired private investigators for high fees, provided information to local media, and offered a $50,000 reward. He set up a dedicated website and called for community cooperation. On the surface, he showed the image of a devoted father. However, after several weeks passed, even the smallest leads began to dry up. There was no activity in bank accounts, no new traces on social media. Information from friends gradually stopped coming in. The school held a memorial service. The church held special prayer meetings every Sunday. Local volunteers continued search efforts, and classmates helped on their days off. Local news programs ran special features. Everyone was searching for my son. After a year passed, regular search activities naturally dwindled. Though I returned to work, I couldn't work with the same energy as before. Still, I continued to preserve Ethan's room exactly as it was. On his 16th birthday, I bought a cake and placed it in his room alone. The same for his 17th and 18th birthdays. Waiting for my son's return had become my new normal. After 3 years, the police began treating it as a cold case. But I couldn't give up. I regularly held press conferences and continued sharing information on social media. I built a relationship with an organization supporting missing children. On my way home from night shifts, I find myself staring intently at young men on the streets. When I spot someone with a build similar to Ethan's, I sometimes end up following them. And each time, when I realize it's someone else, I'm hit with a new sense of loss. Richard continued to show outward cooperation with the search efforts. But something felt off. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I just couldn't shake the feeling that there was some hidden shadow behind my husband's kindness. The calendar on Ethan's desk remains unturned since that day. While the clock hands keep moving, this room alone remains trapped in time from 5 years ago. The room, kept dustless by daily cleaning, has an surreal air about it, like a model room. But I couldn't give up hope. My maternal instinct told me Ethan was safe. Someday, the truth would surely come to light. Until then, all I could do was wait. Time passed, and 5 years had gone by. As the seasons changed from autumn to winter, cold winds began to blow through Boston. As maple leaves fell in their autumn colors, I continued my shift work, including night shifts as always. Perhaps I was trying to fill the void in my heart by immersing myself in work. The bustle of the emergency room actually helped calm my mind. Ethan's room hadn't changed at all since the day he disappeared. The dustless space maintained by daily cleaning was like a time capsule preserving that moment from 5 years ago. The calendar on his desk still showed 2019, with Ethan's last penciled note, "Science Club Experiment," faintly visible. Textbooks remained open to their last pages, even a half-drunk water bottle stayed in its exact position. Every 15th of the month, I would routinely visit the police station. Even though I knew there was no new information, I kept up this habit. The detective in charge had changed 3 times, but I couldn't give up. With each visit, I could painfully see how the police officers' gazes grew more sympathetic. Richard had become absorbed in his work. His reputation in the real estate industry grew year by year, and he was rarely home. Even when we did see each other, conversation was minimal. "How's work?" "Fine." "I see. That was the extent of our exchange. A heavy atmosphere constantly hung over the house. Though we maintained the appearance of a normal couple on the surface, the emotional distance between us was definitely growing. Opportunities to share meals together decreased, and I often ate alone. I still couldn't break the habit of setting the table for three. The unused dishes reflected light emptily. That day was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. As I was trying to get some sleep before my night shift at the hospital, the phone suddenly rang. Seeing the police station number on the display, my heart leaped. It wasn't the usual 15th of the month check-in. A slight hope flickered at this irregular contact that would normally cause worry. Mrs. Mitchell. The detective's familiar voice. But something was different. There was an unusual tension in his tone. Someone in prison wants to meet with you. When I heard those words, I felt strength drain from my entire body. My mind went blank, and for a while, I couldn't speak. My hand gripped the receiver so tightly I could hear the plastic creak. Could it be? I couldn't even find the courage to finish that sentence. A mixture of hope and anxiety swirled within me. My heartbeat echoed in my ears, and surrounding sounds grew distant. The detective's explanation was minimal. A meeting at the Massachusetts Youth Detention Center. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. He said he couldn't share more information over the phone. That reluctance suggested something serious was being withheld. I couldn't sleep that night. I quickly found someone to cover my night shift. I spent until dawn in Ethan's room, touching each of his belongings while contemplating tomorrow's reunion. I stroked the spines of his favorite books, touched his uniform buttons, traced the letters on his certificates with my finger. Everything was exactly as it was 5 years ago, yet everything looked different. When morning came, I stood frozen in front of the mirror. 5 years had mercilessly etched themselves on my face. Would Ethan notice the changes in me? Or would he not even remember me anymore? The next day. In the car heading to the detention center, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. My fingers trembled so much I could barely steer straight. Even the music from the car radio sounded strangely distorted. After arriving at the facility and going through rigorous security checks, I was led to the meeting room. I had to surrender all my belongings, pass through metal detectors, and go through numerous doors. Though I was used to secure areas in the hospital as a nurse, this heavy atmosphere was completely different. The room was smaller than I had imagined. One small window in the white walls. Metal table and chairs placed sterilely. The fluorescent lighting increased the tension even more. A surveillance camera was mounted on the wall, its red light blinking silently. I clasped my trembling hands in my lap while waiting for the door to open. The ticking of the clock's second hand seemed abnormally loud. My heartbeat quickened and my breathing grew rough. The precautions I had read in the waiting room kept spinning in my head. Then the door opened. The heavy metallic sound echoed through the room, and time seemed to stop. I caught my breath when I saw the young man who entered. Though taller and thinner, it was unmistakably Ethan. The softness of his boyhood was gone, and his eyes had hardened somewhat. His cheekbones protruded, and there was an unfamiliar scar on his neck. The orange prison uniform emphasized the strange reality. But he was definitely my son. Time passed in silence as we both lost our words. Silence filled the room. Ethan couldn't meet my eyes, keeping his head down. That gesture was the same as 5 years ago. just like when he hadn't finished his homework or failed an experiment. Why didn't you contact me?" I finally managed to squeeze out the words. My voice was shaking. I wasn't even sure what I meant by the question. It just contained 5 years' worth of feelings in that one phrase. Ethan slowly raised his face and met his mother's eyes for the first time in 5 years. "I wanted to protect you, Mom." The moment I heard those words, hot tears rolled down my cheeks. There was a glimmer in Ethan's eyes too. Though my appearance must have changed in these 5 years, his eyes reflected only kindness. My son's hands were clenched on the table, his knuckles white. I instinctively reached out to touch them, but the yellow line drawn on the table stopped me. Visiting room rules. Beyond the physical distance, 5 years of time lay between us. The afternoon light streaming through the window illuminated Ethan's profile. Traces of the 15-year-old boy remained, but he had definitely grown into a young man. The sense of loss from these 5 years I couldn't watch him grow struck my heart. The wrinkled uniform shirt, overgrown hair, thin fingers. The empty time told by everything pierced my heart painfully. "There's something I need to tell you." The moment I heard those words, my heart clenched tightly. Ethan took an envelope from his prison uniform pocket and placed it on the table. The guard behind him nodded slightly, indicating it was an allowed possession. "This is a record of these 5 years." Ethan's voice was quiet but strong. From the envelope, he pulled out an old cell phone and several handwritten notes. Though the screen was cracked, it still powered on. There were signs it had been carefully preserved like a treasure. Richard had complete control over our lives. My body trembled at Ethan's words. My son scrolled through the screen. There, meticulously recorded, were traces of abuse with dates and times. The number of times he was hit, the content of verbal abuse, the location of injuries. Like scientific experiment data, the 15-year-old boy had calmly kept records. There were even photos showing bruises and scars vividly. "I never wanted you to notice, Mom. He would wait for your night shifts." Ethan's voice caught. I held my breath. Indeed, the dates of recorded abuse almost always coincided with my night shift days. It was planned. Richard would wait until I wasn't around, and then he would. But that wasn't all. Ethan pulled out another note. It contained amounts and dates recorded in detail. Like an accounting ledger, every transaction was recorded with precision. "Richard was controlling all of your salary, Mom. The bank book, credit cards, everything. It was calculated to make sure you couldn't escape." I felt overwhelmed by my own foolishness. Indeed, I had left all finances to Richard. At his suggestion, my salary was automatically deposited into a joint account. I believed that was what family bonds meant. The day I ran away, I made a decision. Nothing would change if I just endured it. But if I was going to run, I needed evidence. Evidence to expose Richard's true nature. Ethan began living on the streets of Boston from that day. He met other runaway teens and survived with their help. He even shoplifted to eat. But it didn't end there. 6 months later, I got caught up in a robbery. Ethan's voice trembled. He was arrested as an accomplice while trying to stop his companions from robbing a store. However, this became a turning point. When I was arrested, I told everything to Detective Johnson from the Juvenile Division. That detective listened seriously to Ethan's story. The evidence of abuse, the reality of economic domestic violence, and the disappearance to protect his mother. After confirming all the truth, the detective immediately began to act. However, the investigation proved more difficult than expected. Detective Johnson explained why. Richard Cooper's influence far exceeded our imagination. The detective continued with a stern expression. He wasn't just a real estate agent. He was a central figure in Boston's redevelopment projects, with strong connections in political and financial circles. He had collaborators within the police force, and our investigation was constantly monitored. The first year was a battle against internal information leaks. Detectives assigned to Ethan's case would suddenly be transferred, important evidence would mysteriously disappear. The investigation team had to be reorganized with a small number of carefully selected, trustworthy members. In the second year, moves to obstruct our investigation intensified. Detective Johnson opened a thick file. Cooper cleverly manipulated Ethan's disappearance. While playing the role of a devoted father searching for his beloved son, he was behind the scenes destroying evidence. Richard frequently appeared in the media as a father searching for Ethan. He offered a $50,000 reward, hired private detectives, and held press conferences almost weekly. From the outside, he appeared to be a father desperately searching for his son. Those well-meaning actions were actually severely hampering our investigation. The detective's expression turned bitter. The private detective he hired was actually a former police officer, serving to monitor our movements. The reward money information was just noise to drown out real information about Ethan's whereabouts. In the third year, even more clever interference began. Richard had invited police executives as investors in his real estate development projects, creating conflicts of interest to pressure the investigation. In the fourth year, we finally saw a breakthrough. Detective Johnson pulled out new documents. Cooper's former secretary provided whistleblowing testimony. Falsified accounting documents, witness testimony of domestic violence. It was decisive evidence. However, it took time to obtain that testimony. The former secretary feared retaliation from Richard. The police prepared a witness protection program and carefully drew out the testimony. And the final year was spent solidifying all the evidence. The detective showed a timeline diagram. Cooper's crimes go beyond domestic violence. Organized fraud, evidence destruction, obstruction of justice. Meticulous preparation was needed to prove everything. But why didn't you tell me? Ethan answered my question. If I had contacted you, Richard would have noticed immediately. Then all the evidence would have been destroyed. We knew we needed perfect evidence to bring Richard down. And yesterday, finally all preparations were complete. At 5 a.m., over 100 investigators moved simultaneously. Richard's home, office, warehouse, related companies. Search warrants were executed simultaneously, and decisive evidence was seized one after another. Richard tried to contact his collaborators within the police force, as predicted. However, those phones were already tapped. It only added new evidence of obstruction of justice. Mom, I'm sorry. Tears fell from Ethan's eyes for the first time. But I wanted to protect you. I wanted to free you from Richard's control. That's why I made you wait 5 years. Just then, the bell announcing the end of visiting hours rang. Ethan stood up and looked firmly into my eyes one last time. It's okay now, Mom. Those words contained 5 years of feelings. The next day's newspapers widely reported this case. Prominent real estate developers' continuous abuse revealed. 15-year-old boy's meticulous 5-year records proved decisive. Allegations of bribing police executives. Systematic evidence destruction scheme exposed. It sent shockwaves through the local community. Richard's double life as a supposedly good businessman. 5 years of pretending to be a devoted father searching for his son. And the courage of a boy who risked his life collecting evidence to expose it all. I submitted a leave request to the hospital. We need to start a new life now. The evidence Ethan desperately gathered. His courage. And the police who carefully prepared to protect us. All the truth is gradually coming to light. It was an ending, but also a beginning. 3 months have passed since then. In the Boston suburbs where maple leaves beginning to turn color sparkle in the morning sun, we started living in a new apartment. Ethan's detention period was shortened due to his success in the rehabilitation program. Our 3-story apartment with white curtains swaying in the breeze is nothing compared to our former mansion, but here we have real freedom. Twice a week in psychological counseling, I face my own blind spots. As an emergency room nurse working many night shifts, I always struggled balancing work and childcare. Economic anxiety as a single mother, guilt about making my son feel lonely. Richard perfectly understood these vulnerabilities of mine. At first, he played the role of the ideal father perfectly. He always attended Ethan's school events, taught him baseball on holidays, bought him science books. He showed understanding for my night shifts, encouraging me saying, "Your work is important." I had no room to doubt his kindness. "Leave the finances to me." The control began with those words. My salary was automatically deposited into a joint account, and all spending was under Richard's control. Under the beautiful name of family trust, my economic freedom was gradually taken away. By the time I realized it, I was in a cage unable to take a single step. As a nurse, I should have been trained to recognize signs of abuse. But I couldn't see what was happening in the closest place. Richard cleverly timed his abuse with my night shifts, and Ethan desperately hid his pain to avoid worrying his mother. A perfect disguise and trap of silence. That created 5 years of darkness. Richard's trial concluded with a 20-year prison sentence. The seized materials revealed similar patterns with other families. His real estate empire collapsed, and his assets will be used as a victim support fund. Ethan hadn't given up his dream of becoming a medical technologist. His passion for science still burned strong even after 5 years of emptiness. On weekends, he volunteers at the Juvenile Detention Center, supporting young people in similar situations. I also transferred from the emergency room to a specialized domestic violence prevention department. I'm working particularly on creating guidelines for early detection of economic domestic violence. To rescue people suffering in similar situations earlier. That has become my new mission. Breakfast time is now our happiest moment. The aroma of coffee Ethan brews, the toasted bread, morning sunlight streaming across the table. Casual conversation flows, sometimes followed by silence. But that silence no longer holds any heaviness. "Mom, looks like it'll be another beautiful day." As I nod to Ethan's words, I look out the window. A new seasonal wind is blowing. Indeed, 5 years took many things from us. But it also gave us new things. Strength, gentleness, and above all, hope. Difficulties will surely come in the future too. But we're not alone anymore. Ethan and me, and the people who support us. These bonds light our new path. Beyond the morning mist, we can see a definite light.